Hi, and welcome to Contracts Over Coffee, the podcast where we talk to our partners about all things contracting while sipping a delicious coffee beverage. I'm your host, Ann Baker, Senior Director of Partner Marketing for Icertis, and with me today is our terrific guest, Ulrich von Beck, Vice President of Strategic Consulting from our partner pros. Welcome, Ulrich.
Thank you, Ann.
So we like to start off this podcast with the same question for all our guests. Ulrich, what is your story?
What's my story? Well, I've been in technology for over 20 years now, and I actually started off in supply chain of all things in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I saw that whole industry turn into a nice to have to a must have, and after that, I jumped over into the startup world, spent about 10 years in the startup world. Uh, Having a great time inventing new things, new models, new go-to-market SaaS systems that drove marketing and in fact digital media as well. And then I jumped over to pros about 2.5 years ago because I did see a great opportunity in certainly the pricing and CPQ space, and I saw there was a real revolution happening there. And it really reminded me a lot of the supply chain world 20 years ago. And it's turned out to be true that this is an industry and an area when it comes to contracting, contract lifecycle management, agreements, and prices that feed into those agreements. There's a large uplift there, and there's a lot happening. So I like being where the action is, and that's how I ended up at Pros.
Yes, CLM and CPQ are having a bit of a moment right now, so it's a fun space to be in. What do you think, though, is the biggest challenge with contracting today?
Well, we see a couple of challenges. One, I think, is the sheer volume. As you see large organizations just gathering more and more market share and a much larger customer base, you're seeing tens of thousands of customers, all with their own contracts, all with their special terms and conditions, and trying to manage that sheer volume in a quick and efficient way from actually executing that contract to all the way through to renewal is quite a challenge when you have that much going on in one company.
Yes, I know. I know for us, we work, as you do, with a number of large enterprises. And some of these enterprises, like Microsoft, for example, is one of our customers. And for them, in just a few months, we digitized over 1 million contracts. I mean, those are the kind of volume some of these enterprises have. It's incredible. So
Absolutely. And you've got to try and make sure that everybody's adhering to those contracts
yeah.
and all those terms and conditions that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even the size of each one, we're doing quotes of 10 to 20,000 line items on one quote, and contracts that are hundreds of pages long, just in items and prices, and managing all of that is just unbelievable these days.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, where do you think contracting is going then?
Well, Icertis does a great job of managing that sheer volume of contracts. For someone like Pros, we're managing those prices on those contracts and creating those orders and quotes. And so, being able to produce a customer item specific price for every sales situation is humanly impossible with these large quotes and large contracts. And that's really where AI comes in from our side to power that and do these things that are humanly impossible to do. As an example, just take 50,000 items that you can sell. That's not even configurable. That's just in your catalog with 20,000 customers, and you're at 1 billion price points that could all be different depending on what type of customer there is and their particular selling situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's there's been a lot of talk recently about like where is AI really applicable and where are good use cases for it, and certainly for these very complicated pricing and quoting situations and contracting situations is where we're seeing it really put into practice today. And I know even with the COVID-19 situation, all of a sudden a number of our customers had to search through their thousands and thousands of contracts for force majeure clauses and, and information about getting out of trade shows and getting out of, or having to change terms on delivery timelines and things. And so having AI be able to go and make those adjustments for you, whether it's on pricing or quotes or contracts, is really, really critical.
Yeah. You do have a good point. Sorry, and about
Mhm.
those changes in those contracts. Many of our customers are actually tied to indexes, like the gold index or a raw material index that's out there, and those are written into the contracts. And so, as you see this cost volatility right now happening, where prices are moving all over the place for the raw commodities, those prices can be adjusted for various customers. And again, humanly impossible to go through your 5, 10, 20,000 contracts and adjust all of those according to the gold index or another commodity index.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example. So, what do you think people would be surprised to know about contracting?
Well, one of the most interesting things for us is we did a survey across about 1,200 B2B buyers last year, and one of the most interesting facts that came out of that is 60% of buyers prefer a price generated by AI. And this sort of blew our minds. So
Yeah.
as this price goes on to a contract, uh, they'd rather just have it be there and not have a human to negotiate with. And we thought it would be like 30%, but we tried to explain that and figure out what is driving that. And really, I think you've got Uber, you've got Lyft, you've got Amazon, you've got all these real-time dynamic pricing consumer environments that are making the buyer or making the buyer used to a fluctuating price. And I think it would have been unheard of 10 years ago to charge between $20 and $80 for the same ride between 2 points
Hmm.
in New York City. But now you can do it. And if it's raining, maybe you will pay $80 instead of 20.
Sure.
And we pay it because everybody's getting that $80 price. I
Hmm.
wait a little bit, usually get it down to like 40 or 50, but you will pay a higher price and you don't feel bad about it because everybody is getting that price that's requesting it. And so when we put that over to the B2B environment, as long as you're not being singled out according to your competitors, for example, that are also buying from the supplier, uh, you feel okay about paying a fair price for the item or the commodity or product that you're buying.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that's kind of shocking to me, that statistic, but it makes sense as people are becoming more and more trained for self-service and getting as much as possible without having to, talk to a human being.
Yeah.
Perhaps we're training them to, want their pricing from AI. So that's fascinating. So, what is one contracting tip you wish every person knew?
Well, I have two contracting tips. One is a little bit tangential, uh, and it comes from the psychologist that was in the movie The Inventor, the Theranos story. Had a great psychologist in there, and his name is Dan Arley, and he has a fantastic piece on providing people choice. Now we know there's the dilemma of having too much choice, and when people have 12 marmalades on the shelf, they may not pick any of them because they just overloaded with choice. But his example is actually with 3 items the choice you can give just for 3 items, and if you put 2 of them very close together, it actually distracts the analyzer or the customer from the third one. And so if you just have very close price differential between 2, and one of those offers being miles better than the other one with this close price differential, people are attracted to that and they will forget about the third option. And I thought it was fascinating the way that our human minds can be manipulated into a trade-off between two things that are close together rather than
Mm-hmm.
looking at all three objectively. And so we can
Yeah.
post the link to that.
Yeah, I'd love to read more about that. It's certainly an interesting tip to apply when you're doing pricing or negotiations around contracting terms and things like that. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Or
Yeah.
you can try it with your kids.
I need to. I need to. Believe me. I need some
Um,
negotiation tips there for sure.
And then I think the second one, the second tip, is certainly more pros self-serving, but also something that we can give back to the pricing community and contracting community, and that's an hour or so with our chief visionary officer, Craig Zawada, who wrote the book The Price Advantage, that's widely used out in the industry, and he has some great perspectives of what to do in the different pricing scenarios, especially now during COVID and coming out of COVID. Spending an hour with him and seeing his insight on e-commerce, the digitization of the whole selling motion, and how that is being accelerated right now during a tricky time for everybody, is time well spent. So I'd like to offer that to all the podcast listeners out there, and we'll post that link in the bottom as well.
That's terrific. He's going to be busy, I think, because there's a lot of pressure right now to recognize revenues rapidly and make sure you're pricing appropriately to do so. So I think that's a great tip and great offer for the audience. I'm going to shift gears a little bit now, Ulrich, and want to give the audience a chance to find out a little bit more about you. So we asked before what the audience might be surprised to know about contracting. What do you think people would be surprised to know about you, Ulrich?
Well, there are a couple of things I think in my background, but one of them is I like to cook a 1 hour egg. And so some of you may be familiar with this, but you can certainly sous vide an egg for an hour at around 62 degrees. And it turns into sort of a gelatinous mass and just jello with a soft yolk in the middle. It's very good over salad. But you have to be patient. You have to really, wake up or start preparing early. It
It's
does
a
take an
plan.
hour.
That's funny because for eggs, for me, are always my quick go-to. But if I had to do a 1 hour egg, I'm not sure I could. I'm not sure I'd have the patience for it. But it sounds interesting. I don't know. So
It might be the
salad.
yin. It may be the yin to the fast business yang, where
That's
you're trying
right.
to execute everything as quickly and fast as possible, and then you can cook an
Yeah,
egg for an hour.
we're so used to accelerating everything over here, contracts, everything. I don't know if I could take the time to just slowly sous vide my egg, but maybe I'll give it a shot. So, well, that is surprising. Good luck with your egg
Yeah,
sous
thank you.
vide. And then we'd like to ask, just to kind of get to know you, what inspires you? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really a passion for innovation and driving change. Certainly on the technology front, being able to look at scenarios and business cases and the world and be able to figure out how do we make this more efficient? How do we make it easier for everybody to interact with? And especially now, the innovation around AI being a real supplement to humans doing their job, from Google Maps to AI-driven pricing, is really inspirational to me because we can eliminate so much inefficiency in the system that we have today, and then just spend more time analyzing the world around us with the information that we're given, and making sense of the recommendations we get. Because
Mm-hmm.
I recently worked out that it takes about 11 days to count to 1 million. I never thought so, but it takes a very, very long time to count to 1 million at 1 second per number, and and so those numbers are big. And when you have thousands of items on a quote, and you're trying to go through millions of contracts like you're talking about, we need some AI help. It's just humanly impossible to do, and that's the stuff that inspires me is the intelligence that we can inject to make our lives a little simpler and easier.
That's great. Yeah, and certainly I know we've found our partners are helping us inject some of that intelligence these days, particularly pros. Working with you and your team to pull the CPQ, configure price quote information into contracts has been a great benefit to our customers. And if I could, I wanted to take a minute for anyone who's been kind of checking out my cup on the video that I'm sipping from. We have a terrific webinar coming up together with our friends at Microsoft, obviously pros, Icertis, and Adobe. And it's called Accelerating Digital Sales with the 5 C's. And we talk about how the first C, you get to know your customer a little better with Microsoft CRM and Dynamics. Then the second C, where we're configuring and pricing and quoting correctly to deliver the right products and the right price at the right time. And obviously the third C, contracts, which is accelerating the time to value for contracts for our customers. And then the fourth C, close with Adobe Sign, digital e-signatures. And then finally, coffee, our fifth C. So we have a great event scheduled for August 4th, and we will be putting a link so people can register, and they can get this coffee cup if they register to attend the event. And you'll be speaking on that panel along with all of our partners. And there'll be also a terrific concert at that event. So it's a really unique virtual coffee shop experience that we're encouraging everyone to sign up and attend on August 4th. So check it out, and we'll make sure there's a link on the website, or you can also go to the events page on icertis.com and register and sign up. Well, I think that brings us to the end. Thank you so much, Ulrich. It was a pleasure speaking with you today. And again, thanks to our audience for joining.
Thank you very much for the time. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.